as the offices of the African National Congress would themselves later be located in Marshalltown. The ANC, so to speak, ran in his blood. Reverend John Msimang, Selby Msimang, and Richard Msimang, his uncles, were founder members of the ANC, who were fully involved in the ideology and politics of the ANC. Born of the ANC, lived and worked for the ANC, died for the ANC, died for the people of this country. It was not surprising that Uncle Mendi himself, a founding member of the ANC Youth League in 1944, led the torch that his uncles had given him and became part of those young lions that brought life to the ANC. Clearly, we pay homage to Ambassador Msimang, who covered the entire spectrum of our revolution, our coming into a democratic state, led us into the highlights of his ambassadorship, and saw us as we are, and worried about us. And he had every right to worry about us. We need to pause from time to time as we prepare to bury him on Saturday, to connect with and remind ourselves of the long, rich history of people like himself in this country. People like himself who led an exemplary life. People like himself who gave everything they had for this country. He gave up his youth, went through the glory days of the Youth League, infused the radicalism that defined the Youth League. He went into exile, as you've already heard from the previous speakers, as a pioneer who represented us abroad, served with extreme diligence, with every responsibility he was given, suffered the trials, tribulations, and tragedies of struggle, bore them with grace that only he could take on. He suffered the hardship that defines all liberators, and he was determined that at all times he would give his best. He spent all his life putting the ANC and the future of the people of this country first. He never spared himself in the struggle for freedom of this country. From a very early age, thus from the time when he was a founding member of the ANC Youth League, he loyally worked with senior members of the organization, imbibing the great values and ethos that drove their principles and courageous struggle for freedom. It was from an early age that he distinguished himself as a hard-working, diligent, honest man with integrity that is so lacking these days. And for me, I worried about the way my own father felt about Uncle Mendi. And I looked at him from time to time and wondered if there were no traces of a Sisulu in him. Now it has been made very clear he is a Msimang, and my father loved him for the integrity and outstanding dedication that he had. Uncle Mendi belonged to a generation that bravely responded to the general call for all black people to come forward and be part of the important motive forces for liberation. This he did because he daily experienced the excruciating and savage oppression to which he and the rest of the black population were subjected to. He was to experience the uprooting of blacks at his birthplace that was declared a whites only area. Thus he experienced firsthand the viciousness of dispossession of blacks, of their land and their homes. When he worked in the Mandela Tambo firm, he continued to be exposed to the gross degradation and humiliation of his fellow black people. These were people who sought legal intervention in the face of relentless abuse and subjugation. These were his own people who daily witnessed every human right inexorably taken away from them. And there was very little he could do from a legal perspective. And therefore, he made up his mind that the struggle was the only way he could end this for his people. Uncle Mendi's youth was spent in the ANC that was seeking to find a voice and assert itself in the politics of South Africa. Uncle Mendi witnessed the rise and fall of many political movements that sought to eclipse the ANC. He saw with the advent of the Youth League the rise of the new radical agenda of self-determination and self-definition. It was the Youth League of Uncle Mendi and his peers that reshaped the ANC and modernized it as a people's fighting machinery. It was the entry of the score of young people who infused the sinews of the ANC with this new sense of urgency that broke ranks with the half-a-loaf and half-a-bread kind of politics. The young people were demanding freedom in their lifetime with unparalleled urgency. For the attainment of their political objectives, this generation was prepared to pay the ultimate supreme sacrifice for the freedom of their people. It was this dogged determination that earned them both the praise from our people and the hatred from the regime. The rise of the ANC in the 1950s was mainly a crowning achievement of the work of this generation, including Uncle Mendi. They took the ANC to exile and held it together with fierce jealousy. They sounded the international clarion call about the plight of our people with both honesty and devotion. That is why their pleas were received with conviction. Mendi Msimang was a torchbearer and a gallant fighter whose life needed to be celebrated even as he lived. His simple nature and quiet disposition was a great mark of the power of his personality. He did not need to shout to be heard. He did not need to bang a table to be given attention. For me in particular, whenever I was at Mtuli House and he said, "Follow me," I knew exactly what it was we were going to talk about. It wasn't pleasant news. But he didn't need to shout to put that across. He brought back home a united ANC, and his only plea is that we sustain that unity. Not only in the face of how we want to portray ourselves, but truly sustain the unity that they handed over to us. The ANC Youth League that Uncle Mendi joined infused in him a sense of higher calling of national service. The politics of that generation were in many respects radical, but laden with a profound sense of duty and devotion to the struggle of the African people. That generation faced the cruelest form of the rule of the National Party, which took over in 1948. Uncle Mendi was part of the Defiance Campaign of 1952 and formed part of the Youth Masupatsela, who were instrumental in helping organize the Freedom Charter that culminated in its adoption in Cape Town. When the Great March Against Apartheid was held, Uncle Mendi was counted amongst those young people who assisted in organizing that historic march. When scores of our leaders, numbering 157, were arrested on trumped-up charges that led to the treason trial, Uncle Mendi and a corps of Youth League members helped to sustain the activities of the ANC in the absence of these leaders, and assisted in mobilizing political support for the trials, and in particular sustaining them financially and ensuring that their legal fees were paid. He also provided much needed administrative support to almost all the leaders in this particular period. When the Livonia trial began, he was one of the young people who left the country to wage a struggle in exile. You have heard from some of our speakers how he went into exile and how he established himself there and made sure that the ANC lived and the ANC was understood. The first challenge was opening up external bases for waging both the armed struggle and a diplomatic offensive. He was assigned the role of representing South Africa's interest in London later on, and it was a critical assignment bestowed upon him on the basis of both trust and ability. And those of us who studied in Britain spent most of our lives in the weekend in the office in London, getting educated politically by Uncle Mendi. The London office, which he served as its chief representative, played a leading role in mobilizing European support for South Africa and solidarity for the struggle of the people of South Africa. London became the new rallying base for the exile activities of the ANC. This fact was given credence by the presence of leading ANC members in the country that included Aziz Pahad, Thabo Mbeki, Esau Pahad, Reverend Trevor Huddleston, etc. I could go on. The London office held the fort in sustaining our struggle with the support of many fraternal organizations such as the anti-apartheid movement. Upon coming back, Uncle Mendi served in the first democratic parliament and was elected in the first conference as the ANC Treasurer General. What are the lessons that we have learned from his life? I wish to extract the following key lessons that I think we can learn from his life of service to the ANC, the people of South Africa, and to humanity. He served our people and his organization, the ANC, with profound loyalty. He served our people with sincerity and singular determination. He served our people in the ANC with utter humility. He served the ANC and our people with love, passion, and compassion, and he had enough love for all of us. Let me also indicate those character traits that Uncle Mendi detested. He detested arrogant leadership. He detested and loathed laziness and idleness. He abhorred gossip and rumor-mongering. He detested factionalism and cliquism. He resented pomp and idle pride in leaders and followers alike. He revolted against corruption, theft of public resources. He hated self-serving leaders and those who indulge in empire building. He hated ignorant leaders and followers alike. Let us take this leaf from his life and see how much better our society would become. Uncle Mendi comes from a generation that understood the value of discipline, of hard work, uprightness of character. These were the values that were expected from all of us, and we demand them on behalf of the government and on behalf of the leading party from all of us. He himself demanded them from elected leaders. Uncle Mendi understood leadership to mean service and not to be served. Service was seen and understood to be a humbling enterprise whose ultimate gratitude was to see the work of the country and of the organization done and done efficiently. That was the ultimate reward of leadership, to see the completion of assignments done and duties done diligently. It was indeed insightful of his parents to name him Mendi, the great ship that carried brave African volunteers to serve in the First World War, not knowing where they were going, with no training, with nothing to gain. These soldiers went to fight for what they believed was the right thing to do. The ship sank tragically, and only one thing was recovered from that ship. It was the bell. As you know, the bell of a ship is of great significance. It is a siren that indicates when there is danger. In the human being, it is the conscience. Uncle Mendi in his life encompassed the entirety of this tragedy in one man. The courage of the undertrodden, their determination to face the world and the tragedy of their circumstances, but yet hope that would fill their hearts and fill the hearts of everybody today. That once there lived a people who were in the Mendi, who faced the impossible, who faced the unknown, and triumphed only in spirit, that should live on in our lives. The bell, which is the conscience of everybody here, lives on. And that bell was Uncle Mendi. He held that bell in his heart, and I hope that the Defence Force holds that bell with the same kind of tenderness as Uncle Mendi held his conscience. Uncle Mendi would tell us every time when things went wrong. And he would say, Lind, kwenzekani la? Nobody had any answer. Fortunately for us, he was in the Integrity Committee. And in his time, he was able to tell the truth as it was. None of you will ever understand the loss that the ANC has suffered, the loss that this country has suffered with a man of this stature leaving us. Our hope, our vision, our support, our conscience, he carried us all through all these travels. Today, he is sunk in glory. Let him leave his bell in your hearts. Let each one of us have that conscience that says we must do the right thing at all times for the sake of our people, for the sake of Uncle Mendi. I thank you.
Ending off with some pretty powerful words there. That was a tribute by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Lindiwe Sisulu, paying tribute to the late Mendi Msimang, a man that she has described as a torchbearer and a gallant fighter who was of a simple nature with a quiet disposition.